You know that feeling, right? You're in a meeting or maybe at a dinner party. On the surface, everything seems totally normal. People are talking, they're nodding, the words are polite, but your stomach is in a knot. Something feels off. You just can't put your finger on what it is. And then you see it. Maybe it's a quick glance between two people or a certain tone in someone's voice. And suddenly it hits you. You're in the room, but you are completely missing the real conversation. It's like you can hear the words, but you can't hear the music. Well, guess what? That feeling, it actually has a name. It's called interpretive asymmetry. And what's wild is that this isn't just about a simple misunderstanding. No, this is about power. It's a way of sorting people into insiders and outsiders. So here's how we're going to unpack this. First, we'll dive right into that feeling of missing the real conversation. Then we'll look at the two mindsets at war here, vertical versus literal thinking. From there, we'll see how that gets twisted into what's called weaponized ambiguity. We'll even ask if there's ever a good reason for this kind of thing. Then we're going to turn the lens inward on the war inside your own head. And finally, we'll look at a possible way out, the path to shared fluency. All right, so here's the core idea. A lot of important conversations are actually two conversations happening at the exact same time. You've got the surface level, the literal words being said. But underneath, there's the subtext, the hidden code. And that alarm bell that goes off in your gut, that's the feeling of being on the wrong side of that divide. So how does this even happen? Well, it all comes down to two fundamentally different ways of thinking. And these two modes are constantly at war with each other, not just in our culture, but inside our own brains. Okay, so in one corner, we have the vertical mode. This way of thinking assumes everything has layers. A sentence is never just a sentence. It's a signal, it's about status, it's about what's not being said. The real meaning is always between the lines. And in the other corner, the literal mode. This is the mindset of pure efficiency. It hates ambiguity. To the literal thinker, it's just noise, static. It's just asking, come on, get to the point. What's the data here? A perfect way to think about this is to picture a jazz club. If you walk in with that literal mindset, you hear a bunch of notes that sound, well, wrong. It sounds like mistakes, just random noise. But for someone thinking vertically, someone who gets the code, oh man, that dissonance isn't a mistake at all. It's information. It's a clever reference to another song, a callback. It's a whole other conversation happening that only the insiders can hear. Now, feeling like an outsider at a jazz club, that's one thing. But when this same dynamic plays out at your job or in your relationships, that's when this gatekeeping of meaning becomes something way more sinister. It becomes a tool of control. Just imagine this. It might even sound familiar. You finish a huge presentation and your boss looks at you and says, "That's an interesting approach." Now, your literal brain hears interesting and thinks, great, a compliment. You walk away feeling pretty good. But the insiders, the people who speak the language of the office, they heard the slight pause, they caught the tone, and they know interesting is code for, that is a terrible idea and you are on thin ice. You think you're getting a pat on the back when you're actually walking right off a cliff. So there's actually a playbook for this. It's called the ambiguity attack, and it works in 4 steps. First, the attacker delivers a veiled insult, something wrapped in polite language. Then, they wait for you to react to the real meaning, the sting of the insult. The second you do, they jump to step 3. They retreat to the literal words they used. Whoa, what's the problem? I just said you did your best. And finally, step 4. They accuse you of being the problem. You're too sensitive. You're reading into things. It's a nasty form of gaslighting designed to make you question your own sanity. And when that gaslighting works, you end up here. Just let this quote sink in for a second. When someone else controls the subtext, when they curate your reality, you aren't making your own choices anymore. You're not a participant. You're being managed. You've been given a fake map, and you don't even know it. Okay, but hold on. Let's push back on this a little. I mean, this all sounds pretty dark, but let's be real. We all hide meaning sometimes, right? For what feel like good reasons. Is it always a malicious power play? Well, the sources actually explore this. They offer a defense for this kind of thing, a sort of benevolent deception. And the concept is called developmental opacity. The classic example here is Santa Claus. I'm serious. Parents tell this story of a man in a red suit. They aren't lying to exploit their kid. They're using a simple story that a child can grasp to hold a much bigger, more complex truth. Things like generosity, family, and love, that a 5-year-old just isn't ready to understand in an abstract way. But, and this is a huge but, here's the danger. Applying that same Santa logic to other adults, to your team at work, to your partner, that is a profound form of infantilization. You're basically deciding for them that they can't handle the truth. It's paternalistic. You're saying, don't you worry your pretty little head, I'll decide what parts of reality you get to see. And this brings us to a really fascinating psychological twist. So far, we've talked about this as a war between people. But what if the biggest battle isn't happening out there, but right inside your own head? The theory goes that our modern world, obsessed with data, efficiency, and optimization, has literally trained us to shut down the part of our brain that gets poetry, symbolism, and nuance. We're taught from a young age to solve for X, to get to the bottom line, to just give the facts. And the result? We start to crave a world that works like a predictable spreadsheet, because spreadsheets feel safe and controllable. In the process, we lose our ear for the music. And here's the kicker. Because we've suppressed this ability in ourselves, we get angry and attack it in other people. We call them vague or confusing. Why? Because that muscle for understanding nuance has weakened. And frankly, a brain that can only see the literal is a brain that is much, much easier to control. So where does that leave us? Is the answer to just get rid of all layered meaning? No way. That would be the end of art, of humor, of culture. No, the sources argue the real solution is something they call shared fluency. And the idea is pretty simple, but it's powerful. The ethical move isn't to dumb everything down. It's for those who already understand the code, the people who can hear the jazz, to see it as their duty to teach it. The goal is to invite people into the complexity, to share the keys to the kingdom, not to hoard them to feel powerful or superior. Which leaves us with this final, really haunting idea. Perceived deception is the shadow cast by unshared fluency. Think about that. It doesn't matter if your intentions are good. As long as you keep the code to yourself, you will always look like you're lying to the people on the outside. Your benevolent secret casts the exact same shadow as a malicious lie. So I'll leave you with this to think about. The next time you get that knot in your stomach, that feeling that you're missing something, ask yourself, am I actually being deceived? Or am I just missing the key to the code? And maybe even more importantly, when you're the one who holds the key, are you using it to open a door for someone else, or are you just using it to lock them out?